All right, action.
Hello everybody, welcome to Monterey. I'm a guest with RM Sothebys at the biggest sale of the year. I have a media pass, there's some amazing cars around. Let's check it out. Okay everybody, just gonna do a first impression walking into the ballroom of RM Sothebys. Let's see what they have this year. Wow, look at this. I love seeing cars displayed like the pieces of fine art that they are. Wow. Front and center in this amazing room is this 1960 California Spider. Now this one looks pretty unusual. It looks like a race car, and that's because this is exactly how it appeared at the 1962 Targa Florio, where it got 19th overall and 3rd in class. Now that's such a remarkable achievement because this car was sold 2 years earlier in full road going trim, and later on in its life slapped a roll bar on it and some numbers, and off it goes endurance racing, and it achieves this remarkable result. It goes to show just how great Ferrari road cars were in the period. Now what we're seeing here is the result of a perfect restoration by Brandioli and Zanassi. They worked in conjunction with Ferrari Classiche, and just recently these numbers were put on there, number 82, and that roll hoop was added to appear just as it did at the Targa Florio, a crowning achievement for the California Spider. In Monterey, this fetched a top bid of $8.25 million. That wasn't enough to sell the car, but the top bidder and seller came to agreement and it was sold in Monterey. Now at the back of the room, we're approaching one of the most desirable Jaguar road cars, this being the 1957 Jaguar XKSS. Now these cars were the road-going version of the Le Mans winning D-Type race car, and Jaguar only made 16 of them, so they're exceedingly rare and super sought after. Now I just love this color combo here. It's a Curie Ecosse blue with a red interior, and that's how it originally appeared and sold to California to a Mr. Sidney Kohlberg of San Francisco. Now he was my kind of guy. He raced this car lightly up and down the West Coast, but preserved its originality. And as such, we can have a look inside here and see all these original fits and finishes, original perspex, aluminum, patinaed leather, a whole bunch of components which really just show their age and how well the car was looked after. Now, after its stint in California, it went to the UK. We can see the Jag 1 registration there, super desirable. Now in the UK, it had a host of great ownership, including Lord Anthony Bamford, Campbell McLaren, and Tom Hartley Jr. So in Monterey, this was definitely one of the most desirable lots. It was one of the biggest sales of the week. It sold for $13,205,000. An incredible amount of money, and a lot more than a racing D-Type, which really just blows me away. Keeping with the Jaguar theme, here's 1952 Jaguar C-Type chassis number 24. Now this is a well-known C-Type in the community, having a full ownership history from new. This car was sold first to the West Coast to a dealer named Charles Hornberg. He got all the best Jaguars. I think he had LT2 and LT3, and he had what must have been one of the first C-Types on the West Coast, this one. Now, he sold it to a Mr. Alex Thompson. Alex Thompson took this car to the Lone Star 200 and had Phil Hill race it to 2nd overall at the Air Force Base in Austin, Texas. So, very important car for Phil Hill's racing career. Now, beside the car was the original engine. This was the original block, built up as a full showpiece. It has a cylinder head, sandcast carbs, coils, and everything. So I guess fitted as a replica engine, and I can see that this was previously raced. So the owner was racing this with a replica engine. They could just thrash it on the track, and there it is, the original one, kept in perpetuity beside it. You can see the number there, E1024-8, so just a low compression engine. I guess fuel wasn't that great back in the day, but yeah, it had sandcast carburetors, dual coil ignition, I'm not sure which cylinder head that is. It looks kind of unnumbered, and a plenum there. So a really nice showpiece that goes along with the car, and an important cylinder head block for the car as well. Now in Monterey, this failed to sell, but it got a top bid of $3.3 million US dollars. Next up, let's have a look at this 1953 Fiat 8V Auto Vu. Now, this car really is the result of its second owner, who took it to Zagato and had it rebodied in this Berlinetta body style with that iconic double bubble roof. He also had the engine upgraded to 104 Tipo competition specification with quad choke Webers. And in this configuration, it went rally road racing in the hills of Italy quite successfully. And it really is one of my favorite Fiats of all time. Now, this was raced up until about 1958. It's one of only 32 total examples made by Zagato. It has an absolutely impeccable restoration by Strada e Corsa in the Netherlands. And as a result, it sold for $2.9 million US dollars in Monterey. Next, we're moving towards one of the most beautiful Porsches of all time, the 1956 550A Prototyp Coupe. Now, the 550A was the upgraded version of the 550 that raced very successfully in 1953. These were an updated version with a revised space frame with the aluminum bodywork wrapped around it. Here we see it in beautiful bare aluminum, and an upgraded 1.5 liter engine. Now, only 2 coupes were made in 1956 for the 24 Hours of Le Mans. That was an extremely rainy event. Very few cars finished, including this one. It won first in class and placed 5th overall at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Now, in Monterey, it failed to sell, but it got a top bid of $5 million. Also in the same sale, RM Sothebys were offering the real deal, this being the 1955 Jaguar D-Type chassis number 546. Now, this car was originally delivered new to the USA in Old English white with a red interior, and it raced all over the southeastern US in quite a large roster of events and owners. Now, throughout this car's life, it's had lots of work done to it. It now has a high-spec 3.8 liter engine with a wide-angle cylinder head. And in 1993, the car was fully restored into really the car we see here. And that was a restoration done by John and Gary Pearson. Now, during that time, they noted that the car still had its original engine subframes, which is really remarkable. But they did replace most of the bodywork, which comes with the car. So it looks like a lot of the bodywork was too bad to use, but it's kind of funny how it's still retained with the car, and I don't know if it'll ever be reunited with the car. I guess that's up for the next person to decide, but unfortunately this car did not sell in Monterey. It fetched a top bid of $3.6 million, and this kind of blows me away because that XKSS we just saw got a bid that was $10 million more. So I think there's slight disparity. Either the XKSS has to come down to earth, or maybe these D-types are worth a little more. I'm not sure. Maybe the history of this one brought it down a little bit. You never know with auctions, and that's what happened in Monterey. And the last car I want to feature from this incredible room is this 1959 Ferrari 410 Superamerica. Now, this chassis, 1305SA, I first saw in 2017 sell out of the exact same room for $5.3 million. And that's because this is one of only 12 GT Ferraris done to the top specification with the 4.9 liter 400 horsepower engine, bespoke Pinin Farina bodywork, kind of looking like an oversized California Spider. There were only 12 cars produced in this specification, and here it is now fully restored by RM Restoration back to its original configuration. I just love it. Presented here in Monterey, it sold for $6.605 million, a tremendous sum for an awesome car. Wow, look everybody, a plaza of dreams here with RM Sothebys today. Where do you start? I mean, there's just so many wonderful and fabulous cars. I am blown away. Another ballroom full of cars. Let's see what it looks like. Oh wow. Look at the cars in here. Wow, the BMW race car 328. Beautiful. Packard Darren Champagne. Now, the first car that caught my attention in this room is this 1938 BMW 328 Special Competition Roadster. This is one of just 3 supplied new to the NSKK German National Racing Team, and as such, this car had a bunch of class finishes in 1939, including the 24 Hours Le Mans, where this very car placed 2nd in class and 7th overall. So what we see here in the ballroom is a perfectly restored 328, and it was restored by D.L. George Historic Motor Cars in the exact configuration it was raced at Le Mans. I just love this car. The cockpit shroud on the passenger side, the fits and the finishes. It was really prepared for a Pebble Beach show car presentation, and it really does look splendid here in Monterey. Now, RM Sothebys called this one of the most significant BMW competition cars ever offered at auction. At the sale, they got a top bid of $1.6 million, but that was not enough to take it away. Next, let's look at this 1953 Siata 208 CS with racing Berlinetta bodywork by Balbo. Now, Siata back in the day were specializing in performance modifications for Fiats, and when there were extra Fiat 8V engines lying around, Siata made these special race-inspired cars that we see here. And like the 8V Auto Vu, they had the same over-square 70-degree all-aluminum V8 in a sporting chassis. Now, this is just one of 9 bodied by Balbo of Turing in this racing Berlinetta bodywork, and only 6 of these are accounted for today. Now restored back to its original dark blue paint and tan leather interior, this very car fetched a top bid of $1.4 million, but that wasn't enough for the sale in Monterey. I just love all the details, the aluminum trim, the cockpit, everything about this is very, very typical of an Italian sports racing car of the 1950s. The big fuel filler on the back. Very interesting accents running down the side of the car. Really rare and such a treat to see a Balbo bodywork in Monterey. They really specialized in custom-bodied Fiats and Lancias, including the Siata we see here. Beside the Siata was one of my favorite Alfa Romeos, this being the 1950 6C2500 Super Sport with Villa d'Este Coupe bodywork by Touring Superleggera. And I know that's a mouthful, but that's because this really was the top offering from both Alfa Romeo and Touring at the time. Now, one of these cars, similarly bodied, won the Villa d'Este Concours, the famous concourse on Lake Como, Italy. And the name of the concourse was lended to 36 cars that look kind of like this with the same front end treatment, but no two were really alike. Now, this car has an extremely colorful history. At some point, this car was converted into a drag racer in Texas. Can you believe it? There was a Corvette engine fitted in there with side pipes, and it's a lot different than the car we see here at the auction. And that is really because in 2021, this was restored by Rizla Classic in Italy back to its original configuration. And if you can believe it or not, they found the original engine and put it back in the car. I just love this color combo. Here we see the black with the green interior, the bakelite knobs, very original looking steering wheel. It is just so spectacular. Now in Monterey, RM described this model as a boutique hand-built luxury model. No two examples are exactly alike, letting each car a character of unique one-of individuality. I really love that description, but unfortunately, in Monterey, it fetched a high bid of $600,000, and that was not enough to take it home. Stepping back just 1 year, we have another Alfa Romeo 6C2500 Super Sport, this having Cabriolet bodywork also by Pinin Farina. So while this shares the same design language as the Villa d'Este Coupe we just saw, it's uniquely different in detail. You can look at the grille treatment, the headlight treatment, the bumper treatment. It's all individual and unique, and that really speaks for the bespoke nature of coach building in the 1950s. So this car benefited from 52 years of continuous family ownership in Italy, and that probably made it a wonderful car to restore. And that's exactly what Rare Classic Restorations did in Boca Raton, Florida, a multi-year rotisserie restoration to Pebble Beach concourse standards. And it really does show here in Monterey. I do really enjoy the color scheme, the silver paint, the blue interior. Everything about these 2500s is just so wonderful. Now in Monterey, this sold for $555,000 US. And we're just getting a look at this interior. I love these interiors, the bakelite knobs, the metal form dash. It's so exquisite. Pinin Farina were really good at all of the chrome trimming. Everything about these cars is truly spectacular and difficult to restore. Moving right along, we have this 1954 Cunningham C3 with coupe bodywork by Vignale. Now, this was really Briggs Cunningham's attempt to enter the production car market so it could really be considered to race in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And he really envisioned a hybrid supercar powered by a Chrysler Hemi V8 with a European-inspired chassis and bodywork. This being, of course, Vignale of Italy, which typically bodied Lancias and Ferraris of the period. And here we have kind of an oversized version of that for maybe the American market. They probably were a little costly, and that's why only 27 were made in period and 20 by Vignale in the design we see here. It does look very splendid in gray on gray paint scheme, and I think that was the original color scheme for this car. Now, what we see here is the result of a restoration which finished off in 2015. Having a look at the interior here, it is just so splendid with the gauges. Everything that Vignale did in period was really jewel-like, and this car is just a great example of this. So in Monterey, this car fetched $940,000 US, which is a tremendous amount for a very rare car. Let's have a quick look at one of the best British roadsters of all time, this being the 1965 Shelby 289 Cobra chassis CSX 2407. Now, this car was delivered as a road car, but was extensively modified for George Arendt's III, who later partnered with Chinetti to form the North American racing team NART, known for racing all the Ferraris. So this car was revised with flared fenders, side pipes, scoops, staggered center lock, Hallebrand magnesium wheels, a roll bar, and it was prepared this way for the Southeast region's A production class in 1965. And the NART driver, Ron Hutchison, finished second overall in the season standings. So an outstanding Cobra with tremendous race history. It's no surprise that this fetched $1.16 million at the sale. Here we are moving in on one of the most desirable 356s, this being the 1957 Porsche 356A Carrera GS/GT. Now, yes, this is where the Carrera GT got its name from. GT really meant lightweight specifications, so this car was fitted, I believe, with a roll bar, lightweight interior, and maybe some lightweight panels, I'm not sure, but there were very few built to this specification. Now, Carrera GS, of course, is the Furman 4-cam engine, very rare and the most desirable option available on the 356s at the time. Now, this car was restored by Die Werkstatt in 1998, and you can look at the engine bay here. It was done to a very top level. Reportedly, they found the original engine and gearbox and put them back in this car. Pretty unbelievable, if you ask me. Just looking so stunning here in Monterey. Now, at the time when Die Werkstatt had this car, the owner found a very rare hardtop, a steel hardtop with a wraparound rear windscreen. So, very unique sight here on this Carrera GS GT Speedster. Now, in Monterey, this car failed to meet the reserve, but it did fetch a remarkable top bid of $1.1 million. And the last car we'll show in this great room is this 1956 Chrysler 300B with a bespoke Coupe Speciale body by Boano. This is the only Boano Chrysler in the world that looks like this, and that's because it was specifically commissioned by Italian industrialist and Fiat boss Gianni Agnelli, and he demanded the very top available coachwork from the period from Boano. And look at their interpretation of American design here. That dashboard with leather, wood, and steel. It is just so wonderful. The leather top, the gold champagne color scheme, green top, ivory interior. This thing just ticks all the boxes. What a wonderful, beautiful two-seat Grand Tourer interpretation of American design by Boano. I can't get enough of this. So reportedly, even after the body was made, it took Boano 2 months to do all the fittings, to make the bumpers, the chrome fittings, and everything that goes together to make a complete car. And it really shows it's remarkable here in Monterey. So this was built on a shortened Chrysler 300B chassis. That means it has the 354 cubic inch Hemi V8 and the push button operated 3-speed torque flight transmission. This thing probably was a great Tour top speed. I have no idea. Is this a 150 mile an hour car? I'm not sure, but I just love it. Look at that bumper treatment, the grille treatment. Everything about this car is really Italian jewelry. So Agnelli actually never took delivery of this car, maybe because it was too controversial for the Fiat boss to be taking delivery of a new Chrysler, but he had the car instead delivered to his brother in France. And it was featured in some magazines of the period. And as rightly it should, it's one of the most impressive Chryslers produced in 1956. That's for sure. Now, Monterey, this car fetched the enormous sum of $1.1 million US. Top offering in Monterey with RM Sothebys was this 1964 Ferrari 250 LM. Now this one, chassis number 6053, has the distinction of racing the 1968 24 Hours of Le Mans. But before that, it had quite the racing career. In 1964, it raced the BRS-CC circuit. In 1966, this was number 24 at the 12 Hours of Daytona. And this even raced 4 events in Africa in 1967 before its Le Mans appearance, where it was raced by Paul Vesti. Now, at the time, the engine and transaxle were replaced in this car with another almost identical unit from car number 6167, and that's because the engine and transaxle in car number 6167 had ACO stampings and it was already approved to race at Le Mans. Now, at the race, the car unfortunately retired with gearbox issues, and that really was the end of its major racing career. As we see it here in Monterey with a glorious engine bay. Have a look at that. Beautifully detailed. This was the result of a restoration finished by Ferrari Classiche in 2021, and they say it retains the original engine and transaxle as utilized at Le Mans in 1968. So just going to have a look at the details here. You can see how beautifully finished this is with this steel frame, the aluminum bodywork, beautiful wheels and tires. Much higher presentation than this would have had at Le Mans in 1968. So in Monterey, this fetched the tremendous top bid of $17 million, but that wasn't enough to meet the reserve, so this car remains unsold, even though that's probably pretty close to what this car is worth. Behind the 250 LM was this absolutely fabulous 1957 Ferrari 250 GT with Berlinetta bodywork by Zagato. Now this chassis number 665 GT is one of only 5 bodied by Zagato, and here we see it in race form, exactly how it raced the 1957 Mille Miglia. There, it finished 2nd in class and 6th overall, which is a really exceptional result for a privateer entrant. In fact, that last Mille Miglia in 1957, I think the top 10 cars, 8 of them were Ferraris. What we see here is the result of an exacting restoration that was completed in 2014. Rare Drive Inc. of New Hampshire fully restored this thing right back to its Mille Miglia livery, including race numbers, sponsorship decals, which were removed for this sale, and it looked absolutely spectacular. First appearing at Casa Ferrari in 2019 and at Pebble Beach Concours. Just such a wonderful rare Ferrari presented at the very top level. Here we can see the aluminum bumpers, the grille, the headlight treatment, even the tires, the driver's name on the tires themselves on those Engelberts. Just such a wonderful presentation. So RM Sothebys sold this as a sealed bid. They said that it contains its fully matching numbers, engine, transmission, rear axle, and important racing history. But unfortunately, in Monterey, it failed to sell. And since it was a sealed bid, we have no idea how much this got up to. But I could imagine a car of this caliber should be nearing around $10 million. Although I don't really know. It's such a singularity, it's really hard to value. Now, before we finish this exceptional sale, I have to mention a whole nother section of cars that RM Sotheby's had on offer, this being the Lost and Found Ferrari collection. These were cars that came out of long-term storage in Florida with a collector called Walter Medlin. He stored them for 30 or 40 years. And what you're seeing here is my tour. I did a live half-an-hour tour walking all around each car, having a good look at them all. So if you want to check out these cars, please have a look at my other video. I'll put a link in the description below. But just as an example, that 500 Mondial, that mangled Ferrari right in front of us, sold for $1.85 million. And there was some real tremendous lots and sales here in and amongst the Lost and Found collection. So again, if you want to see these cars more, check out my video in the description below. All right, well that does it for my coverage of RM Sotheby's in Monterey. They totaled $164 million in sales from just collector cars. What a remarkable result. And as a bonus, on Thursday, they announced this 1962 Ferrari 330 GTO for a sealed bid in New York later this year. Chassis number 3765LM for a rumored $60 million estimate price. Pretty incredible stuff. What an awesome sale. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you later. Bye-bye.